Thank you, Dan. And yeah, I'm just going to acknowledge my anxiety to you because I'm sat here trembling, knowing it was getting closer and closer. So if I don't look at my screen, I do apologise now, but I will do my best to work through my notes try and be natural, even if it looks like I'm not looking at you. So, oh, there you go. Anyway, three of us from Thrive are going to talk on mental health. Other members of Thrive have had an input on this Zoom session. So the three of us are Helen, who's an IT manager, Lorna, who's a children's mental health nurse, and me, an adult psychotherapist and clinical supervisor. We are part of the mental wellbeing missional community group Thrive. We're going to start, Lorna's going to start us off soon with adverse childhood experiences, followed by depression and suicide prevention. And as mental health is an emotive, see, anxiety can't even get the word out, emotive subject, we would like you to take care of yourselves. Therefore, if you feel uncomfortable or triggered by anything during this time, we have Lena and Katie on hand to talk to. Please contact them by phone if you need to. The numbers are on the St James by the Park website, and there they are, they're up on the screen as well. Or put something in the chat at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So do talk to Lena or Katie if you feel uncomfortable or triggered about anything that's being said today. So that's my introduction. We're going to start off with a reading from Helen and then on to Lorna for the adverse childhood experiences.
Thanks, Carol. So the reading today is from Romans 8:38-39. I'm going to be reading it from the Message version. I'm absolutely convinced that nothing living or dead, angelic or demonic, today or tomorrow, high or low, thinkable or unthinkable, absolutely nothing can get between us and God's love because of the way that Jesus, our Master, has embraced us. I'm going to hand over to Lorna to cover the ACEs.
Hello, everyone. I'm also a little bit nervous, so apologies. Also, I think if I was doing this face to face, it would feel less weird. So forgive me as you would if I was in the room with you. Okay, so why are we talking about adverse childhood experiences when we're supposed to be talking about mental health? Well, I'm going to play you a video which sort of explains the study a little bit, but mental health and mental illness are something that affect all of us. So all of us have periods in our life that are when we are mentally healthy, and all of us have times in our life when we are mentally less healthy. And what happens to us when we're children has a really strong impact on that. So we're going to watch a short video and then I'm going to chat at you a bit more, I hope.
Did you know that what happens to me as a child has a huge impact on the rest of my life? Some children grow up in a supportive, happy environment where positive relationships can make them feel safe. Others grow up facing difficulties which can have a long-lasting negative impact, even affecting what kind of adult they'll become and what health conditions they'll have in the future. These stressful events in childhood are called adverse childhood experiences, known as ACEs. ACEs was first identified in America after a study found as the number of stressful events as a child increased, so did the risk of experiencing a range of health conditions when you're grown up. These stressful experiences in childhood include different forms of abuse, physical or emotional neglect, and things that can happen to your family, like domestic violence, adults with alcohol or drug problems, parents splitting up, having a mum or dad with a mental illness, or having someone from the house in prison. But how does this affect me when I grow up? Well, the more ACEs I have now, the more risk I'll be be affected when I am an adult. If I have 4 or more ACEs, I'm more likely as an adult to suffer from heart disease, develop type 2 diabetes, be in prison, have committed violence, or do things that are bad for my health, like smoking, drinking, and taking drugs. There are also other things which can have similar long-lasting effects on my health, such as bullying, losing a parent, not having a home, and being poor. In Scotland, 260,000 children are living in relative poverty, and out of those, 7 out of 10 children living in poverty are in families where at least one adult is working. If you're grown up, not all work is good for your health, and being in work doesn't always mean you're not poor. A study in England found that people who have experienced 4 or more ACEs were 3 times more likely to live in the most deprived areas. So inequalities matter. Please help me and others like me. There are things you can do to help prevent ACEs. Talk about them. The more people know about ACEs, the more they can think about them in everything they do. If you work with children, have a think about whether they are experiencing an ACE and what impact it might have on them. Chances are you might have experienced an ACE, maybe more than one. What impact has it had on your life? Was there anyone you could speak to about it? Research has said that having an adult that you can trust and speak to could help stop the negative effects of ACEs. If you work with grown-ups in services such as homelessness, addiction, or prison services, think about the impact of ACEs on them and what impact it might have on their children or kids they might have in the future. If you work in a school, think about how your work can help support children experiencing ACEs and what can be done to prevent them. Are there other people outside your own work that can help us combat ACEs? Can you work with other people to help prevent them? Please help Scotland be the best place to grow up. People like me shouldn't have to suffer. So what are you going to do about it?
Okay, can I have my first slide, please, Josh? So the original 10 ACEs that the video outlined are the 3 types of abuse: physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Neglect, both physical and emotional, and poverty can cause physical neglect even if our parents don't mean it to. And family dysfunction, so that includes violence to the mother, having a parent in prison, substance misuse in either parents or an older sibling or somebody else living in the house, having a parent in prison, divorce, and a parent with mental illness or attempted suicide. 2 out of 3 of us will have experienced one ACE as children, and 1 in 5 of us will have 3 or more. Sit with that for a minute. Which, if any, are true for you? Which, if any, are true for those who are around you? What about those you work with? The key part really of the study though wasn't about the bad things that happen, although obviously it's good to hold those things in mind. The amazing thing about this study was that it showed the increase in our likelihood of using poor coping mechanisms and of us experiencing mental and physical illnesses, depending on how many ACEs we experienced. Can I have the next one, please? Okay, so if we experience an ACE or if we experience 4 or more ACEs, we are 4 to 12 times increasingly more likely to experience alcoholism, drug abuse, depression, and to attempt suicide. We are 2 to 4 times more likely to have an increase in smoking and poor self-related health, to have more than 50 partners and sexually transmitted disease. We are 1.4 to 1.6 times more likely to have an increase in physical inactivity and severe obesity. And there was a graded relationship with how many ACEs you'd experienced as to how likely you are to have heart disease, cancer, chronic lung disease, skeletal fractures, and liver disease. And that's just a short list. If you're really interested, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study now looks into over 80 different health conditions and whether it affects them. And basically, it does. So I'm not saying Thrive have not brought this to you because we're saying that all people who experience poor health and poor mental health had these experiences. But we don't know. And I think that's the really key thing. We don't know. If 2 out of 3 of us have experienced one of these and 1 in 5 have experienced 3 or more, that's really significant. And if people have experienced ACEs and then go on to have poor mental health, they're going to find it much harder to cope than somebody who's had a less traumatic upbringing. Why do we need to talk about this in church? Well, for me, this is where my compassion for people really comes from. When we are sat in church with somebody who's being really awkward, or somebody comes in the back and they're smelly and they're shouting, it is very easy to make judgments about them, to make judgments about why they're behaving in that way that isn't appropriate, or how the way they communicate doesn't work. And we just don't know what their backstory is. Chris always says to me, you always say everyone's got a backstory, and it's true, and we don't know what it is. Even the people we live with, the people we love, the people we work with on a daily basis, we don't know what happened to them. We don't know what might still be happening in their houses, and we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. The other thing that I think is really important from this study is that we can decrease the blame on people who engage in these things. It's quite easy to be judgmental about people who don't do any exercise, or who drink, or who miss work, or do any of these things. But actually, Jesus doesn't judge them. He knows what they're doing, what their sins are, but he also knows the context better than we ever will. And so he sees people in that context. And I'll have my face back, please, tech team. And why is it important to thrive now? Well, we all know that mental health and physical health difficulties have increased massively in lockdown. We're going to talk a bit specifically about suicide because that's been so much in the news, and it's something we can all work to look out for. But I think something that's been really key for lots of people that I'm working with, and lots of people who experience mental health difficulties generally, is that they've had to sit with their emotions and to sit with their difficult stuff in a way that they haven't for a really long time. We often talk about distracting yourself for, going out for a walk, for, pop to the shops, go and see a friend, speak to somebody. And those things have become much, much harder for people, particularly people who are quite isolated anyway and relied on community groups and being able to go to things, the public libraries, stuff like that. And even now, a lot of that stuff's open. I don't know what you guys feel, but I feel like it's less accessible. I feel like taking my kids to the library is no longer a fun activity, but it's actually a time when I, as a mum, have to keep saying, don't touch that, please put your mask on, put some hand gel on, and that makes it much more stressful. And if I'm finding that more stressful, everyone's finding that more stressful. I think we also have had more time at home sitting quietly. And if you are struggling with your emotions, if you're struggling with your memories, if you're having nightmares and flashbacks and horrible things in your head, it's really, really hard to stay at home and be quiet. For some of us, it's been a bit of a relief having time like that. But for some people, that is their own personal version of hell. And people who've experienced these adverse childhood experiences are now having to sit and are experiencing memories that they haven't had to think about for a long time. So this is the important bit. What can we do? We need to shout about inequality. Okay, it tells in the Bible, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, heal the sick, set captives free. And that is our job. That is what Jesus asked us to do. And we can all do that, whether it's by speaking to people we see, whether it's by joining campaigns, whether it's by giving money to the fund at church or other funds, paying stuff towards Scratch this winter. That relief that we can offer through those things has a direct impact on families, particularly on children who are living in poverty. And we know the rates of people living in poverty in the city are going up because of this situation. And, as the video said, it's not necessarily whether people are in work, it's about whether they can manage their money, but also about whether they can access the things they need. So shout about inequality. Where you see it, shout. Listen and acknowledge what people are saying. So be open to having conversations about this stuff. It's awful. It's one of the hardest parts of my job. But actually the ability to sit next to someone and genuinely hear the things that have happened to them and to say, I'm really sorry, that shouldn't have happened, is incredibly powerful. And we can all do that. We can all say that wasn't okay. And we can all sit on our desire to fix things and just listen. And that's relevant for people who are experiencing things now, but also people who experienced yucky stuff in the past. The other thing we can do is pray for healing. Our God is mighty, and he can help people to overcome these really difficult things. He works for the good of those who love him in all things. And some of the people who survive and go on to live whole and happy lives have incredible testimonies. And God does work. He is there in those dark moments, even if we can't feel him. The other thing you can pray for is those of us who are trying to help. I need your prayers. Anyone in mental health services at the moment needs your prayers, whether they're a patient or a staff member. And that's pretty true for the whole of the NHS and schools and everyone else. It's tough. And if all you can do is pray, then please pray, because we need it. If you want to learn a bit more about this stuff, there's a really good TED Talk by Naomi Burt-Harris on the ACEs, and there's a whole set of resources called the ACEs Too High resources. Or you can talk to me or Carol or anybody who's working in the frontline healthcare, and we will all be able to tell you a story of how this stuff affects people's lives, of how this stuff has an impact on how we view ourselves, on how we view the world. Me and Carol will absolutely bore your socks off. So over to you, Carol. Thank you.
Unmute myself. Thank you, Lorna. So as Lorna said, the past can wound and leave scars. We may carry them for a long time or just a short while, but the feelings are complicated, the emotions are deep-rooted and can spiral. The spiral of negative thoughts can feel impossible to change against an invisible psychological enemies that try to steal happiness from us and threaten to destroy us. The fight is real. Almost 1 in 5 adults are likely to be experiencing some form of depression during the coronavirus pandemic in June 2020. This has almost doubled into 1 in 10, so from 1 in 5 to 1 in 10 before the pandemic. Symptoms range from lasting feelings of unhappiness and hopelessness to losing interest in things that people used to enjoy and feeling very tearful. Mental health issues related to our lockdown and the pandemic are especially hard for people with depression. Suicidal thoughts are related to mental health. 1 in 5 people have suicide thoughts. 1 in 15 have attempted suicide. In 2019, a total of 5,691 suicides were registered in England and Wales. Women are more likely to have suicidal thoughts and suicide attempts than men. But men are 3 times more likely to take their own life, and it's prevalent amongst younger men. Mine says the summer lockdown was bad for people with mental health. A winter one is going to be 10 times worse. The fight is real. So we're going to have a look now at signs that someone's not okay. What to look out for, whether we're in church, whether we're walking next to our next door neighbour, we're with friends. These are signs to look out for. And then I'll have a look at what do you do if you think someone is struggling. We recognise that some people, the struggle with mental and emotional difficulties can make life seem overwhelming and hopeless. Signs that someone's not okay. Many people struggle to cope at one point in their lives. We all know that. You know, I'm guessing that most of us have struggled in one way or another. Reaching out to someone can help them know that someone cares. That's all we need sometimes, that someone cares, that they are valued, and help them access the support they need. So signs to look out for. Are they feeling restless and agitated? Feeling angry and aggressive? Feeling tearful? Being tired or lacking in energy? Are they not wanting to talk to you or to other people? Not wanting to do things they usually enjoy? Using alcohol or drugs to cope with feelings? Finding it hard to cope with everyday things? Not replying to messages or being distant? Talking about feeling hopeless, helpless, worthless? Are they talking about feeling trapped by life circumstances they can't seem to find a way out from, and feeling unable to escape their thoughts? A change in routine, such as sleeping or eating more or less than normal? Engaging in risk-taking behaviour, like gambling or violence? You may not always be able to spot these signs, but they're a help to help you to look out for them. But you may not always spot them, especially as people start to physically self-isolate because of the coronavirus. It's a difficult time, but the fight is real. These emotions may be more difficult to spot if you're seeing less of people you're close to. It can also be useful to identify circumstances that can trigger suicidal thoughts or make it hard for someone to cope. Situations to look out for: loss, including loss of a friend or a family member through bereavement. And again, we know that thousands and thousands of people have died since March. This is a big thing. Suicide or attempted suicide of a family member, friend or public figure. Relationship and family problems. Housing problems. Financial worries. Job-related stress. College or study-related pressures. Isolation and loneliness. Depression. Heavy use of or dependency on alcohol or other drugs. And you know when that's happening because, you know, we've got dry October at the moment. They wouldn't be able to manage a dry October. Why not? Just a question. Again, those may not apply to everyone who's struggling, but they can be useful things to be looking out for each other. What do you do if you think someone is struggling? Many people worry that reaching out will be intrusive or make things worse. You will soon be able to tell if a person you're speaking to isn't comfortable and doesn't want to have that kind of conversation. If they don't want to open up, you'll still let them know that you're there for them, that you care for them. Once someone starts to share how they're feeling, it's important to listen. And there are lots of listening skills that you can look up online if you want to go deeper with that. But I haven't got enough time to go through all of these things now, as much as I'd like to, even with my anxiety. So not trying to identify what they're going through, not trying to offer them advice, and not trying to solve their problems, but listen. So one of the things that I found to be really helpful is the Samaritans website. Loads of stuff there. And they're saying, don't be afraid to approach someone who you think may be struggling to cope. There's no evidence that talking to them will make things worse. That's reassuring, isn't it? Yeah. Showing that you care can be a powerful way to support someone. If someone is talking about suicide, always take it seriously. You don't have to be able to solve their problems, but if you feel you can, offer support and encourage them to talk about how they're feeling. Listen to them. Ask direct questions. Don't be afraid to have a frank discussion. Many people want to be given a chance to talk, but don't want to burden anyone around them. Encourage them to seek help. Talk together and discuss their options. You can find options from the Thrive booklet, which is on the St James by the Park website. Have a look at it. Loads of resources out there and signposting. One thing that I didn't know that I did learn whilst researching this and putting it together is that you could actually ask the Samaritans to phone someone. I never knew that. And that for me is brilliant, because if you're feeling out of your depth or you're really worried about someone, you can call them on 116 123 on their behalf. When you contact them, you can tell the person that you asked us to get in touch with, or keep you anonymous if you prefer, and they will contact that person. I think that's fantastic. Thank you, Samaritans. But if they are in immediate danger, for example, they've hurt themselves, the quickest way to get help is call an ambulance, 999. We all know that number, don't we? So, but when you are looking out for someone and you're concerned for someone and you're looking after their well-being, you need to support yourself as well in this. And that's really, really important. Self-care. Lorna and I know about self-care and what that looks like. And if we don't do it, we will be, well, I don't know, burnt out. Yeah, she's nodding.
Jelly.
So yes, self-care is important. So that is for you as well. If you're, a member of church staff, someone who's involved in looking out for people or looking out for each other, you might be just looking out after your neighbour or something. Supporting someone can be distressing itself for you. If you're helping someone who's struggling, make sure you take care of yourself as well. And if you need to talk about your feelings, you can again call the Samaritans, get in contact with the Thrive team, the pastoral team, member of staff. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't keep any struggles to yourself. And things to look out for yourself are very similar, if you like. Are you lacking in energy? You're not able to give out. You're feeling tired, exhausted, your brain fog, hard to concentrate, restless, agitated, tearful, wanting to cry all the time. I know when I'm getting it because I feel these things. Not wanting to talk to or be with people, not wanting to do things you usually enjoy, using alcohol or drugs to cope with feelings, finding it hard to cope with everyday things and tasks, experiencing burnout. You need help too. Ask for help. So the fight is real. If you can go away with anything, just remember the fight is real. We have a God who we can go to, and he's amazing counselor, wonderful, that verse thing, anxiety, just made it go out of my head.
Healer.
Thank you, Lorna. Look out for each other, look out for yourselves. Let's talk, keep talking, open up, be honest. You don't have to struggle alone. I've got most of this information, sources of information I spoke to from the Samaritan's Mind, and the statistics came from the Office of National Statistics. I hope you found this helpful. And now it's time to go to Lorna again, who's going to tell us where we can get support.
Okay, well, Carol, I think you can hear me, but you've still got Carol's face. That's confusing. Okay, so obviously Carol said if there's a threat to somebody's life, ring 999. But ring 111 if you see a decrease in somebody's mental health or they express self-harm or suicidal thoughts, and a mental health nurse will ring you back. You can support somebody to go and visit their GP. That's probably the best thing. Don't frog march them in there. People generally don't like that, but you could offer to drive them or to help them make an appointment. You could also ring the Samaritans. You can ring the Samaritans for support for you to talk through what you've talked to them about and, you know, get some guidance of where to go next. You can ring the Samaritans, put them on speaker and be like, talk to my friend. And as Carol said, you can get them to ring back. If they're under 25 and they don't do phone calls anymore, there's a new service called The Mix, and you can message them on 85258. And they also have, if you go to the Mix website, they can also live chat or do various technologically advanced things. So that's really good. But talk to somebody. Don't sit with it alone. If you're not quite sure, that's what the Thrive team are around for. Email us on the thrive@stjamesesbythepark.org email address, and somebody will get back to you. Obviously not immediately. If it's an urgent thing, call in the proper professionals. But if you're just worried about whether you're going down the right road or where you might signpost somebody, please get in touch. That's what we're around for. There's, you know, when we set up Thrive, one of the things we were really keen to do was to not create a club for mad people, because it doesn't sound much fun. Or actually, it sounds like the most fun, but I know I'm unusual. What we need to do is support people by keeping them involved in normal stuff, and actually by looking after them in groups of other stuff they're interested in, because one of the best things to do are to do fun stuff with other people, despite what's going on for your mental health. So that's why this is how Thrive functions, if that makes sense. So just keep inviting people to stuff. Even if they're not coming, just keep texting them, just keep reaching out to them, and share Jesus' love with them, perhaps through nagging them a bit. And now I think we're going to go to Helen.
Thanks, Lorna. Yeah, so just to finish off, I want to encourage us all in this period of listening throughout this autumn period, that if mental well-being is in your heart, and you feel God is pointing you towards it, that you get in touch with Thrive. We are a small missional community, and we would love to grow the group, and any help or support in whatever shape or form that would be greatly appreciated. Get in touch via the Thrive email address, thrive@stjamesbythepark.org. And as a reminder, if you've been particularly affected by any of what's been shared tonight, and you'd like to talk to someone, Lena and Katie are on hand to chat. Remember, it is okay to not be okay. And I'm going to hand over to Georgia.